Hey, good evening, folks. This is the Generation Red podcast, the kettle corn of Husker fan podcast, where we do our best to keep things sweet, but sometimes we do get a little bit salty. I am your host, Scott, and I am having a good evening so far. And I have my other host here with me. And who might you be?
Howdy ho, everybody. It's Ken. I am a little bit under the weather today, so Scott's going to handle most of the talking duties for me. And I'll just sit here and make sure that the slides show up when they're supposed to. So there you go.
I appreciate you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so today we are going to be doing the Minnesota preview. That's the main meat of the topics today. But first, we would really like to express our gratitude to the No Block, No Rock podcast and everything that they did to do the Nebraska Podcast Awards show. I mean, they did an outstanding job coordinating it. The amount of participation that was involved that night was just... It was one of a kind. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
for the first ever award show for a podcast that's Nebraska sport related, absolutely killed it. And we were able to walk away with a award. Thanks to my dad. My dad has put so much blood, sweat, and tears and frustrations with all of the production of this podcast and everything that he has aspired for it to be. I feel like he's only scratched the surface, and so it's kind of cool to think that we won an award for a production quality that I think is still gonna get better with time. So we are incredibly thankful to all of our listeners and all of our viewers and everybody who voted for us in the category of best visuals. We are sincerely thankful to you. So, Dad, do you have anything you'd like to say about that?
Yeah. I was talking to Brian from Husker Army Podcast before the award show started, and we both made the remarks that this looked like and was set up and run in such a way that it seemed like it was almost like it was the 10th one, like they'd been doing this for years, and it was the first time. So kudos to all the guys, to Jared, to Kyle, to the Nebraska Brewing Company for having us there. And emotion and adrenaline for me walking up to that stage. I had things in my head.
Geeked out.
Oh, I was so freaking gone. It was crazy because I had, believe it or not, on my way to the golf course that morning, I had kind of rehearsed in my head kind of what I thought I wanted to say if we happened to win something. And then by the time I got up on stage, it was all gone. So
Yep, that's how that goes.
if there was something I could have said, it would have been obviously thanks to No Block, No Rock, thanks to the Nebraska Brewing Company, and thanks to the viewers who did vote. But after talking with Brian from Husker Army and a few other people there after we won, it seemed like our peers really put us over the top for this award too. So that's very humbling. I really appreciate it. And being sober 9 months has been awesome. I think it's made me not only a better father, a better husband, hopefully a better man. It's definitely made me a better podcaster. So that's a pretty cool thing. It kind of takes the cake, and that award that sits right there in front of me, because it was given to us by our viewers and our peers, it's kind of the frosting. So thanks, guys. We appreciate it. We'll do our best to keep improving. So that's pretty much all I've got on my mind.
All right. Thanks, Dad. Yep. We look forward to next year. Honestly, I think it'll be the same, if not better. And if that's the case, that is a win in my book. So,
can I interject something here real quick as it relates to next year's podcast award show? I'm in talks with Andrew from Big Red and More. They mentioned us on their show that they just put out this last week, and they talked specifically about wanting to set up a charity golf tournament in association with the podcast awards. So we're working together on that. When we have anything concrete at all, we will let everybody know. We'll probably do something simple like a nine-hole 4-man best ball scramble, so that it'd be a hell of a lot of fun. And I'm pretty sure we could get some former players on board. We could probably get few celebrities around town that are pretty big and doing celebrity stuff or charity stuff, like
Maybe we get Jay Moore.
And Jay Moore and those guys. That would be really cool. So if any of you are watching, or any of you who are watching know any of those guys that might be interested in doing a charity golf tournament, not sure what the charity will be yet. I'm kind of partial to Team Jack. I certainly wouldn't mind doing something for like teammates, things like that. So we're talking about all that, and anybody that wants to help us out, please reach out, and we'll work together to get this thing going. So anyway, sorry, I didn't mean to hijack where we're going.
No,
I needed to throw that in there.
That's really good. I love that idea. I mean, as you know, I love golf. So if it has anything to do with that, then I'm all in. So, and then you just add like charity event and getting all the podcast shows together to bust some balls and have a good time, maybe have a few brews or drink a lot of Gatorade or all of the above.
NA, all that good stuff.
Yeah. But well, what do you say we get into this Minnesota preview? I think we've done all of our intro stuff out of the way. So we're playing at Minnesota this is the things that all of Husker Nation knows, but let's get on track here. So we're playing in Minneapolis. It's at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time. It's going to be aired on Fox Sports. Minnesota is currently favored as of this morning. So I don't know if it's updated since then, but currently favored by 7. The over under is at 43.5 points. And so that just leads right into the basic question right off the bat is, do you think, Dad, that we have the capacity right out of the gate with a new coach, with new guys that need to be plugged in, an offensive line that needs an identity? I mean, you can go down the list of things that need to be proven on our team across the board. Do you think that we have the capacity to maybe pull off this win? Obviously, we can discuss that more in our score predictions, but seriously, do you think we even have a shot at this?
Oh, of course I do. I think this team has been capable of beating Minnesota basically every year Frost was here as the head coach, because I don't think it's ever been a talent issue. I think PJ Fleck even said it himself after the 2021 game when we went up there. We had every opportunity in the world to pull that game out, and we couldn't get out of our own way. And he made the point, he said this was not a talent issue for Nebraska today. It was a culture issue. And if there's anything, the word that many of us are tired of hearing is the C word, the culture word. But all the indications coming out of camp, and when you see the names of the guys that got black shirts, and the fact that this staff is kind of going back to the old school way of giving out the black shirts. We're not giving out 16 black shirts just because we have 12 different defensive sets. We're giving them to the 11 guys that are running out there first, who run the base defense the best. So there's some names absent that were a surprise, like Nick Henrik.
Yeah, I was surprised by that.
But there's also a little bit going around that there's a bum ankle possibly involved in that situation as well. As far as answering your question, I believe we're capable to go into that stadium and beat them by 2 scores. The question is, will we? And that's the question we're going to try to attempt to answer tonight. But could I just throw this first slide up there so everybody kind of has the context of what we're up against as far as, well, the coach that's on the other sideline. As annoying as the man is, he's been quite successful. He's been there since 2017, has a 44-27 record. Basically, he wins 2/3 of his games. He's 5-1 against Nebraska, has a blowout wins in both 2017 and 2019. 2019 is that infamous sleeve gate where Frost got pissed because guys ran out there with shirt sleeves on. And he won in Lincoln in 2020 during COVID year when he had 30+ players that stayed in Minneapolis because they were tested positive for COVID. And he came in with 56 people on his roster and frickin' beat us in our house. And then he won the Big Ten West in 2019 with an 11-1 record. The man knows how to coach. So that's what Matt Rule is up against and what this team who's really trying to change their culture, trying to change the way they view themselves as they go into a game. But yeah, to answer your question in an extremely long-winded way, because that's what I do best. Yeah, I think we absolutely have the ability. The question is, will we? Will we get to the fourth quarter and not shoot ourselves in the foot?
That is an excellent question. I really hope we get those bugaboos out, because if we can at least get rid of the shooting of the feet, I think that we win a lot more of those games that are decided in the fourth quarter. But if we want to figure out if Nebraska is going to win, let's start breaking things down. So let's first look at Minnesota's offense. Fleck is running his offense with a duo coordinator strategy. It's odd, but maybe it'll work in their favor this year. I mean, they basically have kind of cleaned house with coordinators. So Fleck is working with a bunch of new guys. And while Minnesota's offense at this point is going to be largely unproven with the talent that they have coming back, it has a really, really high ceiling if they manage to get their offense to click. Minnesota isn't necessarily known for coming out hot and fired up and ready to go at the beginning of the season. They tend to have slow starts. So that makes me think we are probably going to get the worst version of their offense, which I think really bodes in our defense's favor. Can you pull those stats up for Minnesota's offense? I think that's the slide you had up, right?
Here. This is based on 2022. And, you know, a lot of these players that were part of this offense and part of these rankings are gone. I think they lost the entire interior offensive line. All they have left are their 2 tackles. Granted, they probably got 3 more ginormous California redwood trees behind those guys to back them up with. But yeah, that's what they did last year. It wasn't horrible. Obviously, they leaned on the run. They had Mo Ibrahim and 2,698 rushing yards. I think he had 2,695 of them. So, yeah. And when you average 207 and a half per game, you're going to win a lot of football games, and they did pretty well last year with that. So, but their passing game obviously wasn't great. Just not all that much worse than ours. We were just over 2,600, and that was with Casey Thompson and Trey Palmer. But then again, we also had Purdy and Logan Smothers playing a lot last year because Casey was hurt. So anyway, those are the 2022 stats.
No, yeah, you can keep those up, because I like looking at these and thinking about, well, what are the trends of Minnesota? Well, they're usually going to have 1, maybe 2 highlighted receivers, guys that are just reliable targets that are going to be open most of the time, or you can just throw the ball at them and they'll find a way to bring it in. And then usually they've had, like, whether that's in the slot or the wide out role is what I'm implying there, obviously, with like Rondale. And then you start to think about their offensive line tendencies. They tend to always have stacked offensive line. So even though they're kind of having to reload on their entire offensive line, I am just not going to assume that they're going to have a bad offensive line. But if they are to have offensive line woes, they're going to have them in week 1 against a salty Nebraska defense that I think is going to get off on the right foot. Minnesota is coming back with a pretty solid wide receivers room, because they're getting Chris Ottman-Bell back. He's coming back from a leg injury. They're also going to reload with their leading receiver last season, Daniel Jackson. They're going to have 2 transfers, one from Western Michigan and another from Charlotte, both of which have pretty substantial experience. And they'll have a good tight end coming back with 6'7" Brevin Spanford, along with 2 other guys who have a healthy amount of experience as well. So they're going to have targets that Ethan Kaliakmanis is going to be able to target. And then while we're at it, let's talk about their quarterback. I mean, like we said earlier last year when Tanner Morgan went down in an injury and Kaliak Manis had to come in and relieve him.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he was super clutch. He was able to do things with his legs. He was able to get out of tricky situations. He was able to do his checkdowns and was able to make really clutch decisions in that game and led them to a victory. And so I'm really curious to see what kind of development he got in the offseason and if he's made some sort of chemistry with his potentially really stacked wide receiver room. So that's where I'm like actually kind of concerned. I think those stats, those passing and those rushing stats, I think they're going to kind of meet somewhere in the middle because looking at the running back room, they're going to probably rely on Bryce Williams. This is going to be his 6th season at Minnesota. He's produced substantially when he's been needed, but he hasn't been like the go-to guy with Trey Potts leaving. But then they went into the transfer portal and got Western Michigan running back Sean Tyler, and he had over a 1,000-yard rushing season with about 5 yards per carry. So I think between Williams and Tyler, they're probably gonna be running back by committee at that point because both of them are unproven. And so that actually kind of leaves their rushing offense an unknown, therefore probably predictably weaker. And so I think we're going to run into a more balanced Minnesota offense, and our defense is going to, honestly, I think that's more ideal for them just because it balances out their efforts. And so
Sure.
that's kind of how I'm looking at the Minnesota offense and the Nebraska defense. Because I think our defense is, I think they're going to have a little bit of a warm up period. Obviously, first game isn't going to necessarily be beautiful on all aspect or across the board. But I think out of the two position groups, I think our defense is going to look better than our offense.
I would agree with that. I would agree with that early in the year that the defense will definitely look better. And I think that is kind of to me, the matchup on Thursday is not our offense versus their defense. That's not the matchup for me that intrigues me. What intrigues me is how PJ Fleck and his co-offensive coordinators are going to attack this 3-3-5 defense. Are they going to stick to the run? Are they really going to try to establish the run? Because that's generally the MO you want to use with a 3-3-5 because technically it's smaller, faster defense. Well, not really with God, I was almost gonna call him Nut Smasher. Nash Hutmacher.
There you go. You landed it.
Ty Robinson aren't small human beings. They both weigh around 3 bills, and then you've got surprisingly Blaze Gunnarsson as a defensive end, and then you've got a pretty good sized kid in Chief Borders playing that jack spot. So I'm not sure how successful they're going to be running the football against that kind of beef in the middle. But it's really going to fall on Reimer and company to make the tackles if they do break contain through the line of scrimmage. So to me, that's the matchup I'm watching. And if I'm going to pick a dude on the black shirts that I'm really going to be paying attention to, it will be Blaze Gunnarsson. He's been languishing on the depth chart since he's been here. And he made a jump when this new defensive coordinator came in and they taught a whole new system. Boom, all of a sudden he's a black shirt. That tells me, like I said when we did our Husker Cuzcast, these defensive coaches are good teachers, and they're finding and identifying guys that are going to fit where they need to fit in their system, and they're getting them coached up and ready to go. Because Blaze, I don't know if he was ever going to start, if he was still in a Shenander defense. So I'll be watching him for sure. So that's kind of what I think. Defense versus offense, black shirts tomorrow will be key in getting the victory. And damn it, let's not let them have the time of possession over 30 minutes, 32 minutes or more, because then the defense gets worn down. If our offense can just possess the ball a little bit and get close enough to the red zone that, we can score the football, whether it's a touchdown or not, just get points on the board. Don't dilly-dally it around. When you get close, you hit fourth down. To hell with going with it. Just put the ball through the pipes, as Uncle Ed likes to say. True to pipes. Put it true to pipes.
No, I completely agree. I think that is the key to us winning the game on Thursday is going to be, does our defense produce at a high level that exceeds anything that Minnesota can do offensively? If that's the case, I think that's us winning a football game with obviously the assumed fundamental functionality of special teams and no bugaboos there, and that we can make field goals when necessary.
Yep.
I think if we can do those things all simultaneously, I don't see any reason why we don't win. But I feel like that's asking a lot. But we also now need to consider, do you have anything else you want to add to the Minnesota offense or Nebraska defense?
Well, it like I said, I think that the dual coordinators could be a recipe for disaster, or it could be a recipe for success. I mean, their offensive coordinator that made them so good back in 2019 is gone. He's at Rutgers. Go figure. So we'll see. I think really it's a wait and see mode on the offense, and it's definitely a wait and see mode on our offense, to be honest with you. So, but yeah, that's about all I've really got. We could probably move on to taking a look at their offense if you want.
Yeah. We can take a look at Nebraska's offense and then think about Minnesota's defense. Because kind of like how you said, one of the most interesting aspects of our defense is being that Blaze Gunnarsson is going to be on one of them end rolls. On the offensive side, another area that is really intriguing is this Alex Bullock kid, the walk-on, who is a projected starter. And he's just a sophomore too. So what kind of talent do you think we're going to have in this Alex Bullock? Is he going to, and if he were to be successful at his, let's look at his frame. We've got 6'2", 205. That is like textbook wide receiver.
Yep.
What do you think he could look like? What would his comparable comparison be walk-on wise?
Oh, good question. I've really not seen him play that I recall. My guess is he's going to be. You remember how good Jordan Westerkamp was at getting open at that number 2 wideout spot, where you needed 8-9 yards on second down or third down. Westy usually was the first read. He was just always open because he ran such good routes. Well, on his way out the door, Casey Thompson told Matt Rule and Marcus Satterfield, hey, you really want to push Alex because he's the best route runner out of all of these receivers. Now, had Marcus Washington been healthy all fall camp, would he be in that number 1 slot at that particular receiver position? We don't know that. What we do know is Alex took the bull by the horns, and he's earned a scholarship. So he and his brother both got scholarships now, and he's by all indications, he's starting on Thursday. And I think if there's a safety blanket not named Billy Kemp out there on the field, it's probably Alex Bullock. He's probably always going to run a good route and most likely end up getting open. So if that line can give Jeff Sims any kind of time, and if he can get himself out of trouble, which he is able to do far better than Casey could, I don't know. Maybe Alex starts the whole year. Maybe Marcus gets healthy and he kind of takes over that spot. But I see him contributing 50 to 60 yards on Saturday. I'd say that's a reasonable expectation if we're moving the ball at all.
Yeah, so. And if we're in those third and long situations where you have to do one of those slant routes or crossing routes or something like that. And I think the other thing that might indicate his success in the first game is the Minnesota's cornerback core. This group basically lost its 2 best starters. And that
was the weak point on their defense last year. They weren't as good. Well, they were a little better. They were pretty balanced defense. So that may be the weakness. That was my bad. I thought they were worse in the passing category last year than they were. So anyway.
No, yeah, they had 2 really good cornerbacks in Beanie Bishop and Ryan Stapp. it leaves their room somewhat unproven. They did get a few transfers to fill the void, but all of them come from smaller programs. So they are truly an unproven that half of the secondary. Their cornerback room is truly unproven. And so I think we might see a little bit more out of our passing game success-wise. It doesn't mean that they're going to rely on their passing game. I think that they're just going to have success when they need it, but not rely on it if they don't have to. Yeah, and then you look at the safeties. Once again, this group lost 3 of its largest producers on Minnesota's safety group. They do return Tyler Newbin. He played for over 550 snaps and had 4 interceptions, 3 pass breakups, and 55 tackles. And aside from him, that room is also a giant question mark. So we could potentially burn them in their secondary, which once I kind of found that out, it kind of actually changed my perspective on the game just a little bit. Not that it's going to happen, but there's a potential for it to happen. And it's like a likely potential if you were to say that this would be a down year for Minnesota, which I don't know if I could say that. But yeah, and then when you're looking at their rushing yards and their defensive rushing yards and defensive passing yards, I mean, a lot of that came from their experience, all of their 6th-year seniors that they had on their defense that they lost last year, or that they lost going into this year, because their defensive line, it was a good defensive line last year, but it was kind of, from what I could find on the internet from perspectives from Gopher fans, is that it was an underwhelming defensive line last year, just based on expectations of what they had in the year before that. They kind of expected it to be better. But yeah, it doesn't mean they won't be good. They just won't be 2021 good, and maybe not even 2022 good. They lost some guys that had a ton of experience, but the guys who are filling in for them had plenty of playing time experience throughout the 2022 season, but I wouldn't expect them to take anything larger than a small step back. So I think that's probably what we're going to get. We're going to get at least the same defensive productivity from Minnesota that we saw last year. If not that, a little bit worse. And the only reason why I say that, yes, their secondary is kind of thin for reliable experience. But if what we're trying to do is run the ball, and their defensive line is most likely just going to be just as good as it was last year, and their linebacker room, looking at their linebacker room, well, let's just go through that really quick. They lost 2 of their best starters in their linebacker core, which was Mariano Sori-Marin. I don't know how to pronounce that. And Braylon Oliver. Right. Yeah. Sori-Marin. But they will get their second leading tackler back with Cody Lindenberg. They'll get another Western Michigan transfer. They've actually picked up a lot of guys from Western Michigan.
It's where Fleck used to coach.
Oh, duh, that makes sense. So they're going to get another Western Michigan transfer in Ryan Selig, who played almost 750 snaps last year. So they're going to get some experience back in their linebacker core, but it's definitely better than their secondary, but it's not necessarily something that you can look at and have confidence that it'll be good. So their defense is a potential to be bad, but knowing Fleck and his ability to coach good defenses, even though I think he's got a new defensive coordinator this year. Does he not?
No, I think it's Joe Rossi. I think it's the same one he had last year. So he's just replacing 7 guys who are not 7 starters from last year.
Yes.
And I think you broke it down excellently in the fact that those guys were key, played key roles because they were so experienced, just like that 2021 defense for Nebraska, right? Those guys knew how to play how did I put it? The trigonometry version defense that Shenander was running. Wasn't very simple, very difficult. But those guys had run it for so long, they got really good at it in 2021. It was just the problem was we couldn't get out of our own way to win football games. So
They worked really hard to be the greatest 3-9 team of all time.
My God, and they accomplished it too.
They did it with
I mean,
astute.
I'll hang my hat on that till the day I die, that they were as good a 3-9 team as has ever played college football.
You can look at it from every angle, and that's really the only thing you can come to the conclusion of.
Yeah, it was just so. But yeah, I mean, when you lose the safeties you lost, when you lose the linebackers and the guys on the line and some really good corners, I don't know. Maybe there's an interesting game plan that. But then again, what's Satterfield going to game plan for? He doesn't know any of the tendencies of the players that are going to be starting because we haven't seen them. They're not on film really. So
no,
I'm guessing the scripted first drive is going to be very, very conservative. Just see what they can get with the running game up the middle. See what they can get with the quick passing game, or maybe even tight ends or whatever. I've been hearing that there's been some offensive linemen that have been practicing at tight end as well for some big sets.
yeah,
And that perhaps there may be an option or two. So, but they're not going to know what to expect from us because our offense is completely different than it was last year. You're going to see some spread out elements. You can't not have some spread elements in your offense these days. But, maybe they're preparing for Wisconsin 2.0. I don't know. Maybe we're going to try to be that. I don't know. But I do know that everything's different for both teams. So that's why this game is really a giant question mark almost from top to bottom of both rosters. But we know we're going to kick off at 7:00 tomorrow night. That much we do know. And I can't freaking wait. It's been so long.
If you were to take a bet, somebody asked you to put $50 down on the bet of which running back room do you think is more successful, Nebraska's or Minnesota's?
Ooh.
Which one are you putting money on?
Oh, that is such a good question. Because you have to factor in the fact that it seems
and
like
it's all just stat wise.
Stats, yeah, you can, but I'm kind of one of those guys. I look at things from a philosophical standpoint in the sense that PJ Fleck has been known to develop good offensive linemen, and it seems like they did kind of what Nebraska did back in the day when they were really good. Next man up. When another dude graduates, next guy's up. Chances are he's had some playing experience, so it's not going to be too much for him. If I would, in this game, is that what you mean? Who's going to be more successful in this game? I think it's going to be pretty doggone even. And I would probably give the edge to Nebraska's offensive line because of experience, but I would probably give the edge to the running back room for Minnesota simply because they've always had a guy that could come in and produce every bit as well as the starter. Remember that year when they had like 12 running backs have to run that year, and it seemed like every damn one of them put out 100 yards in every game. So, yeah, I'd give the edge to Minnesota because they have the track record. Nebraska is going to try to establish a new track record of focusing on the run game. So I'll give the edge to Minnesota there.
Yeah, I think you speak some sense there. That's probably where I'd put my money. Because I think you have a potentially high ceiling with like a Gabe Ervin, and the trust and confidence that they have now just put into Ramir Johnson says a lot about what Ramir Johnson can bring to this offense. And then if Anthony Grant can figure out how to keep his hands on the ball, he's also a very, very reliable weapon.
Home run threat to grab a run between the tackles or on an inside zone play when the defense is worn down.
And you literally have three different type of body types. You've got your big back in Gabe Ervin. You've got your standard size back in Anthony Grant. And then you've got your small all-purpose back type.
Scat back. Yep. You quick hit the hole and go in Ramir Johnson. And he's not afraid to stick his nose in there either. That's what I love about him. So, yeah.
But I would still put my money on the reliability of what PJ Fleck has been able to put out in his running game consistently year in, year out. I mean, I bet you when it's all said and done, our rushing stats are going to be almost even when the game is over. I think it's probably going to be both teams getting over 200 rushing yards. And I think it's going to be like 220 and 225,
Sure.
230 for
Yeah.
the winner of that competition. But
You know what? I'd put my money down on that. I'd put my money down on an over-under of a combined rushing total of 452 yards. I'd bet the over because I think we're going to get there with both those teams because they're going to want to chew clock. And
they both want to know if they can run the dang ball.
I got a question.
Okay.
I've got a question for you. In the light of that, which running back room do you think will be more productive tomorrow? Let me spin it this way. Which running back room right now would you say is more talented, Nebraska's or Minnesota's?
Oh, I'd say Nebraska's. I think Nebraska has a way higher ceiling in the running back room because I think Gabe Irvin is just a freak talent.
The key is that up front. The key is up front.
Ramir Johnson has got he's got experience, and then you can't count out Emmett Johnson. Emmett Johnson's is gonna be a dog here soon. I mean, they had nothing but high praises to give to that guy. So I think that we have a really talented room. Sure. And I think with what PJ Fleck has brought with him and his staff, I think that we might see more success out of our running game in the long run versus what PJ Fleck has set as a standard for his guys. So I know that's actually kind of a hot take. I'll admit that, but
a little bit, but putting yourself out there, nothing wrong with that.
Getting way into the future. But if that is there anything else you want to add to either the Minnesota defense or the Nebraska offense? Otherwise, we can move over to special teams.
No, I think I'm pretty much said everything I need to say. I'm just hoping that if we win the toss, I hope Rule elects to go on defense first.
Oh, I hope so.
That would be awesome. See what that 3-5 looks like right out of the gate.
Yeah.
So, all right. Yeah, we can move on to special teams. I don't have any slides for special teams. I did not make any up. I just kind of have a general information slide about Minnesota that's up next, but we've basically covered all of that information already. So we won't even really need to put that up. We can just go right on into special teams and wrap this puppy up with some predictions.
All right. Sounds good. So special teams, as you guys have kind of noticed, you kind of know the drill. If we're going to talk about special teams, we're talking about both teams at the same time. But since they're not opposing sides, they're special teams. Yay. Class is over. So I couldn't really find very much about Minnesota special teams. I'm sure they've got a good place kicker, but the only thing I could find out about them that they are excited about, for as excited as you can get about special teams players, is that they have a dope kickoff specialist named Dragan Kreshik. Yeah, and he's ranked third. He was ranked third in the nation in 2022 for a touchback success rate of 83.1%. And last year against us, he kicked off 5 times, and all 5 were touchbacks. So we might not even need to rely on this whole new philosophy of taking kicks back on our special teams when they're just going to be sailing out the back of an end zone. So
we got the Johnson twins back there. Hopefully he leaves one short for one of those two guys. See what happens.
That'd be sick.
Yeah.
And then looking at our side, I mean, Tristan Ovano was just named as Nebraska's place kicker over Timmy Bleekrode, which I think is huge. It's
huge in the sense that that is not Rule's blueprint. He does not like to start a freshman kicker. He just basically never done it before. So this is completely new for him.
Unprecedented. Big freaking deal.
Go ahead.
No, you're good. And then I guess my only question out of this, well, I mean, I guess we could ask the same question with Tristan Ovano, but how big of a role will Brian Buschini play throughout the entirety of the season? Are we going to be able to look back at some games and be like, if it wasn't for his punting placement, getting them down to the 3, getting them down to the 5, getting them down to the 8, putting our opponents in really bad field position that results in a punt back to our side. I think we could almost always attribute that to a really damn good punter. That's my thought process. Do you share that sentiment?
I absolutely do. And I think Brian Buschini played a big role last year. There was quite a few times when he had the opportunity to pin somebody inside the 20, he generally did. And the statistics show that if a team starts inside their own 20-yard line, they are, I think if I last looked, 35% less likely to actually put points on the board. So when we play the field position game, we have a punter that can put the ball where he needs to put it to give us the best chance to get the ball back without having points scored against. He's a big reason why I think on our over-under game that our defense is not going to have a 90% success rate in the red zone against it this year, because I don't think a lot of teams are going to have as many opportunities to get to the red zone because Buschini's going to boom a few because that dude's got a cannon. So, yes, he will be a big reason why our team is successful. I believe Tristan Alvano will be relied upon in some key moments to make some big kicks. And apparently sometime since they released the depth chart when it was an Alvano or Bleak Road listed and nobody was listed as a starter, somewhere between the release of that depth chart and today or yesterday when the starters were announced or when he was announced, Alvano made a move. And he gave Rule the confidence to start him. So credit Ed Foley. Must be a good coach to calm some nerves in a young man. I remember the last time Nebraska had a true freshman start that people were kind of surprised. His name was Chris Brown, and he was one of the best kickers in Husker history until Colorado guy.
Alex Henry.
Alex Henry came along. Yeah, that guy.
Colorado guy.
Colorado guy. Yeah. But yeah, you know what? I think one of the things I love about this new staff, not only the fact that we've got nothing but adults in the room, not only the fact that Rule seems to have a plan for everything and he has a freaking backup to his backup. I mean, Bob Wager gets fired. Boom, he's got a guy ready to go with Power 5 experience to coach tight ends who would have been the next man up had Wager got another opportunity elsewhere because Rule's always planning ahead. And I think the fact that he does that means he really wants to focus on special teams. And I think special teams is not going to kill us this year like it has in years past. It's probably going to help us win as opposed to every time the ball is punted, oh, crap, will Trey actually catch it? Or will we get a safety? Or will we, good Lord, just give me Santino Panico back there for a year that just is going to fair catch the ball. We're not going to lose the ball. We're not going to make stupid decisions. So, yeah.
No, I think you made really, really, really good points. One of them being that, yes, I agree. I think that Brian Buschini plays a huge role in our overall special teams performance. I think one of the main things that I am going to always take a grain of salt with now and think about it game in, game out from here on out is how much I'm going to appreciate the small details of special teams from here on out. Because for the entirety of my experience as a Husker fan, we had good special teams. Like, as long as I can remember, we always had a good punter. We always had a dude who had a cannon of a leg to get good field goals and was accurate or whatever. And so it's just one of those small things that, like, when you don't have it, it's like, oh boy, that's a real thorn in my side. And so I'm really excited to see what kind of special teams culture we can see changed with this new Rule staff. So that's kind of my final thought on all of that. I'm really excited. I want to just see, this is the last thing I'll say. I just want to see us take a kick return for a touchdown and a punt return for a touchdown in one season. Like, that'd be so cool. I would love to see that again because there's nothing more exciting than it. It's it stinks for your defense because then they have to go, or I guess no, it doesn't. It doesn't stink for them at all. But
I
anyway,
think the last
any
time
other
we had a
thoughts?
punt return for a touchdown was 2019. I think J.D. Spielman took one back against like South Alabama in 2019, and I think our last kickoff return for a touchdown was 2017. J.D. Spielman as well against Fresno, somebody like that. I don't remember, but so yeah, we're due. We're due. We've got some electric athletes back there manning both those posts. So I just posted this in our chat, and I just want to throw it up there on the screen for you that you have now been officially appointed as the preview show host from now on for any of our previews of opponents because you have a knack for it. You're good at digging deep and finding the things that I generally don't take the time to look for. And being a podcaster, I should, but you have a passion for it, and you're outstanding at asking probing questions and keeping a conversation going. So kudos to you. You have now
Thanks, Dad.
been promoted, and your salary will stay the same.
That's okay.
2 times the amount that you make now is still 0.
Yes. Can't do much with zeros. Although they are nice at the end of every beginning number of a paycheck. Yeah. It's always nice. Uncle Sam likes it too.
Yep.
But
especially when preceded by a comma.
Let's see here. So we have talked about offenses and defenses and special teams. Oh my. And I think that we should just predict a score then. Because you can look at everything that we've put into play here. There's a potential for Nebraska's defense to be really good and for Minnesota's offense to be less than desirable. And then on the flip side, there is a chance of Minnesota's defense being also not that good and Nebraska's offense being really good. With all of the talent that they've got potentially there, even though it's not that deep. And then we've got a lot of trust and confidence in our special teams. So that's 3 areas of football that we have never had the pleasure of saying we played all 3 phases of football correctly.
Right.
I can't remember the last time I've ever uttered that.
Yeah.
And so we have the potential for that. And Minnesota has an equal potential to not be that good. But on the flip side, you could say the exact same thing in the other direction. And I think the only reason why Vegas is favoring Minnesota over Nebraska is simply because Fleck and his experience and the trust that we as Big Ten fans, and especially those guys who get paid money to put all this together into some algorithm and decide which team you should bet on. I think that they know these little details about Minnesota and that they're going to come back and they're going to be a good team this year. So with that being said, I'm gonna go with Vegas. I'm not going to follow exactly the line of Vegas, but I still think that Minnesota falls short. I think that Minnesota falls short I think that Nebraska falls short. I think we fall short of Minnesota, and I think that Minnesota wins 24-20. So that means that we go just slightly over the over-under, and Nebraska, what is it? Nebraska would cover the spread. Is that how that works? Because they
would cover the spread. The spread is 7-7. So yeah, they would cover the spread.
So better than what Vegas is expecting, but I don't think that we make the jump quite yet to win a game. As you can see, if Nebraska is scoring 20 points, that means that Tristan Ovano nailed 2 field goals, and we made our extra points. Can't forget that. And so that tells me that we're going to be in a fight. I think that it's going to be a fight, and it's going to be down to the last moment. It's going to be that fourth quarter test that Matt Rule has been all talking about. So that's my prediction. 24-20, Minnesota takes the win. Nebraska goes 0-1 to start the season. What do you think, Dad?
I have gone back and forth on this. I've been thinking about it all day. And I think this is going to be a rock fight, as Chris Schmidt so eloquently likes to put it on Hail Varsity Radio.
Yes.
A slobber knocker. These guys are going to be beating on each other. The lines of scrimmage will be busy. And I think both lines of scrimmage on both teams will both struggle. But they'll do just enough to just kind of go back and forth a little bit between the 20s. But not a lot of scoring is going to happen until later in the game when both defenses get a little tired. I think we're probably going to go into the fourth quarter. It'll be, say, 17-10 or 17-17, somewhere in there, 17-14 maybe. Nebraska's down, and then it happens. Their defense makes a mistake in a key moment when they let Jeff Sims get free. He gets down inside the 20, and Nebraska just removes their will by running it 4 straight times with Gabe Ervin, the hammer. And we score a late touchdown, and the defense bows up in the last 3 minutes and stops them. I've got Nebraska winning 21-17. So we don't hit the over-under, and Nebraska doesn't just cover. They win outright. So don't quote me on it, folks, but that's what I think. I think Nebraska wins it. So, hey, Michael says you need to start drinking the Kool-Aid, Scott.
I will if we start winning games. That's my deal.
Exactly. You know, we've said this before on this show numerous times, and it's why we call it Generation Red, because we both are not just two different generations, but we saw two different generations of Husker football, in a sense that I view everything through the lens of the 90s, through the lens of the greatness that Nebraska was, and the fact that they were different about how they were great. And I always think we can get back there, so I'm always going to be the optimist first. Scott, you obviously view things through the lens of the Callahan years, the years in which Nebraska football was reshaped, was changed, was given no identity when it used to have the Nebraska identity. So it's understandable why you would wait ahead of time. I truly think that if anybody understands what Nebraska needs to do to start winning in the Big Ten, it's Matt Rule. And he understands that, yeah, we might be nice to have a receiver that can take the top off of defense like a Trey Palmer, but you don't need it to win, not in November. You need to be able to control the line of scrimmage and poke the ball in the end zone with a running back or two. So that's why I predict 21-17. I think we do that. I think we win the line of scrimmage in the fourth quarter. So
I really hope so. I'm going over to my parents' house on Thursday night to eat some good food and watch hopefully a good game. And so I'm really hoping my dad's prediction is correct, because I would really love to leave their house that night with like a victory under our belt against a Big Ten foe that we haven't beaten since 2018. So
that'd be cool.
That would be really, really nice. But that begs the question, though, that I think that all Husker fans dread.
I noticed your question. I haven't seen it yet. That's a good one.
Yeah. This is a reality that Nebraska has had to face in recent years. And that reality is getting blown out. How do we feel as Husker fans if Nebraska gets blown out? Something like 35-10. Maybe it's 31-3. Maybe it's 31-6. Maybe it's 31-9. We get 3 field goals and we don't see the end zone once. Tristan Alvano has a great game, but it's in the worst way possible. So how do you feel about Matt Rule? How do you feel about the culture? How do you feel about everything pertaining to Nebraska if we get blown out in game 1?
That is a mighty good question. And I will answer that question when that happens, just like you will believe and start drinking the Kool-Aid if we actually win a game like this. I will address the issue of a blowout if it happens. At this point, it's not going to happen in my mind. So, but would I question the culture? Maybe not. Would I question the offensive game plan, probably, because that's the one thing that might get you blown out if you just have a really lousy game plan and you allow the defense to get some momentum on you, or if you're turning the ball over every 30 seconds. If that's happening, then yeah, I'd be worried a little bit about the culture, but it's not a blowout yet. So I'll reserve my comments and my thoughts on what this team actually is only if that happens. And chances are it will at least once this year, like in Memorial Stadium, Game 5.
Yeah.
But
no,
that's it.
I had some time to think about that question because I was the one who came up with it. And my thought from the get-go was actually kind of relieving, because my first thought was, honestly, it's okay. It's fine. Like it's these guys are going to go through growing pains. They're in a whole new system, whole new culture, whole new set of standards. And so I'm not going to hold it against them if game 1 looks really bad. I think it could bow in their favor, if that makes sense. I think that it would be a humbling and maybe a somewhat stoic enlightenment, something you wouldn't want to necessarily pursue. So yeah, I think I would have peace. I wouldn't immediately be on the fire Matt Rule bandwagon that I think there is probably already a bunch of Twitter trolls that are getting ready to maybe potentially do that, but
they can't wait to be right about the fact that Nebraska hired the wrong coach. There's too many of those fans up there.
Yep.
So, but yeah,
yep.
I completely understand what you're putting down there, son. So
very well. That's good with me.
A good one.
Yeah. So I'm thinking we're probably more in our score idea there. I don't think we get blown out. I think that we have a good game on Thursday. I'm really excited. It's almost actually kind of nice that we have our game on Thursday. I know this is going to be counter to culture. This is just the last thing I'll say. Thursday night games are fun to start the season off only. And the reason why I say that is because you get Thursday night game. Let's say you lose. You still have like 2 days to process the loss before you can enjoy watching other people play football on Saturday.
Right.
And if you win, then you get a win-win because you can still enjoy your football on Friday and Saturday. So I think that to just in the one specific circumstance of if you are starting your season with a Thursday night game, that is like the best thing possible. And you can also add that they get an extra 2 days before they play their next opponent. So, yeah, that's just my random thought that I had. So there we go.
All right.
Anything else?
I think I'm good. Are you good?
I'm good. Right. So that does it for the show. You can follow us on Twitter. Where can folks find us on Twitter?
You can find me and the show at GenRedPod on Twitter, Facebook, and the YouTube channel. Do us a favor while you're watching this very last part of the show. If you haven't yet, go down, click that like button. It helps push this video out to other Husker fans, and we'd really appreciate it. You can also find us at Generation Red on your favorite podcast app. If you are an Apple iOS user and you have not refreshed the feed yet, which unfortunately you will have to do us a big favor. Just unsubscribe from the podcast you're subscribed to now. Search again for Generation Red. You'll see a new icon come up for our show. It'll have both Scott and I on the artwork. So when you find that, you'll know you'll have the right show. Resubscribe, and you'll be able to get all the new content. So genredpod.com is our website, and we might be getting listed with another Husker website here sometime in the future, which is kind of cool. And of course, herdatsports.com. You can find our show there as well, because we are a part of the Herd at Sports Network, which we're very proud of. And we really appreciate those guys and all the work they do to get our podcast out there. So genredpod@gmail.com if you want to send us an email. That's
There you
about
go.
it.
Nailed it. You can follow me on Twitter at ScottGenRedPod. That is Scott with 2 T's. The second T is and will always remain silent. You can follow me there. I am getting a little bit more active. So
Yes, you are.
I'm doing my best.
You're
So
liking
yeah,
stuff now.
give me a follow over there and strap yourself in for all the shenanigans of the season that are to come. So
That's right.
that's where you can follow us. That does it for us. Well, you have your spiel. I don't know what your spiel is. What's the thing you do? You say like a series of words.
I say he's Scott, I'm Ken. Together we're Generation Red, and we're here to remind you every single day to go up to Minnesota and take back our respect, because there's no place like Nebraska.
I like that. Okay. Yep. That's still your job. Iowa's corn sucks a jar of Blackhead collections.
Ooh. God, okay, thanks. As if I didn't feel bad enough already. Thanks. All right, we will see you next time, folks, which will be Sunday, 7:30 p.m., where we will do a recap of the Minnesota game. We'll also preview the game in Boulder, Colorado, and we will be joined by special guest Dave from Husk Guys. So at this point, he's committed, so it should be a lot of fun. Anyway, can't get more Kool-Aid than Dave. I mean, if there was a Kool-Aid award that the Husk Guys should have sponsored, it was the one at the awards show that Redcast Rob is proud to have won. So again, thanks to NBNR Podcast and the Nebraska Brewing Company for putting on a hell of an award show, and for the Alamo Draft House for sponsoring the award that we got, the Best Visuals Award. And we will see you guys on Sunday. Go Big Red.
After we win.
Sink the ship.